No, this isn't a joke or a meme or some obscure reference. This is, in fact, an entire video of me screaming excitedly about jewel-encrusted eggs. But let's start from the beginning. Sup? I'm Hawk, and I'm here to tell you all about Fabergé eggs and how cool they are, so hopefully at the end you'll be just as hyped about them as I am, and the public pressure will make the Fabergé website have an egg tab on their website again. I don't know why I'm so interested in these eggs. Maybe it's just the human tendency to love shiny things, or maybe it's the craftsmanship, but I hope I help at least somebody out there feel the same. Fun game! Count how many times I say egg in this entire video. The answer is too many. So, what are Fabergé eggs? Well, today it's most often used to mean a gaudy fake jeweled egg made to be put in your grandma's fancy cabinet and not touched under the threat of death. But technically it's only supposed to refer to fancy real jeweled eggs made by one company. And Fabergé is the name of a company, obviously. Well, it's actually the name of a guy who started the company too, a company that made fancy jewelry in Russia in the 1880s. Because he didn't start out making eggs. He made normal jewelry things, like a dweeb. But then one day in 1885, the Russian Tsarina named Maria Feodorovna was like, my mom has a cool fancy jeweled egg, I wish I had one of those, and her husband, Alexander III, heard the Easter present alarm go off in his head and commissioned one right away, but like 3 steps extra. This would become the first Fabergé egg. And she liked the egg so much that he put in an ongoing order for Fabergé to make one every year for her, and then his son would go on to continue that order, but double it so his wife and mom would get one. The only stipulation was that they had to be unique and have surprises in them like any good Easter egg should. Must have been nice to have all the Easter gifts for the foreseeable future taken care of instead of having to scramble the night before to the local mini-mart and pick up the most expensive cheap chocolate they have. And so Fabergé would forever be known as the Egg Guy, despite the fact that he probably made some perfectly nice bracelets and necklaces and stuff too. But no, this is his identity now. But back to the eggs. The first one was pretty plain. I mean, it was absolutely covered in gold and had a tiny adorable chicken in the middle, but trust me, when you see the other eggs, this just looks like a normal egg in comparison. That's not a very good metaphor, but you'll see. Because, oh yeah, boys, we going over the highlights. As much as I unironically want to painstakingly list all of the 50 or so Imperial Fabergé eggs there are, I feel like it would be pretty boring to listen to, and you're cool, you know Wikipedia. So I'll just go over the most extreme ones. Because these aren't regular jewel-encrusted eggs, no. They had more surprises inside than a box of sugary cereal. Now, the majority of them were jeweled ruby pendants, or tiny crowns, or portraits of people that weren't embellished at all, we swear. And who can blame good old Peter Carl Fabergé? He had to crank out 1 to 2 of these a year. Sometimes you just can't think of anything, and so you slap a ruby pendant in there. But it gets much cooler than that. Let's go. So in 1887, the egg was called the third Imperial Egg because, drumroll, it was the third one. Now, it's not that interesting, it's just absolutely covered in gold and diamonds and has a clock in it, but it was lost for a while before being found at a flea market in 2014, so think about that the next time you whine about your grand dragging you to the local boot sale. In 1892, the egg was the Diamond Trellis Egg. It looks very understated for their tastes, but the surprise is a tiny robot elephant that was thought lost but was found already in a museum in 2015. So, that was lucky. Saves on acquisition paperwork. In 1894, the egg was the Renaissance Egg, which is your standard decked-out oblong object, but around the 1950s, the person who owned the egg at the time tried to give it to the Metropolitan Museum, but they turned it down because they thought it was gaudy and, I don't know, had an egg allergy or something. So, long story short, big oopsie. But that's not all, because the surprise is lost, but it's guessed that another egg, the Resurrection Egg, which is a clear egg with some Jesus in it, is actually the surprise, as it fits perfectly inside. Neato. The 1900 Trans-Siberian Railway Egg has a tiny little train inside that ran. Adorable. Choo-choo. The other egg made in 1900 was one of about 7 other clock eggs, but this one was called the Cockerel Egg, and a bird comes out of it, so I'm obligated to mention it. Also, it used to be called the Cuckoo Clock Egg, but apparently that was too silly, so it had to be changed. The 1906 Moscow Kremlin Egg is over a foot tall, including the base, and plays music, so that's snazzy. The other 1906 egg had a surprise of a tiny mechanical swan on a lake that swam around. Duh. The Peacock Egg in 1908, surprise, has a mechanical peacock. I'm sensing a pattern. With birds. I approve aggressively. In 1911, the Bay Tree Egg was made, which I would argue looks more round than an egg and also more like a tree than an egg, but whatever, I'm not a royal jewelsmith. This one's a twofer, as it has a mechanical bird that also plays music in it. For a while it was called the Orange Tree Egg, but after they looked at the invoice, apparently they keep real good track of invoices, but not of all the jewel-encrusted eggs, but we'll get to that later, it said it was a bay tree. The Winter Egg in 1913 was notable for the fact that it was the most expensive one at 24,700 rubles, or $12,500, and it was designed by a legendary female jewelry designer. It's all pretty and has icicles on it, and the surprise is flowers. You know, the typical winter symbol. Now it's time for the most historical eggs. The Steel Military Egg and the Order of St. George Egg in 1916 were the last that were completed and delivered before the Russian Revolution happened, ousting Tsar Nicholas II and his family and really putting the whole ordering eggs thing to the sideline, especially because World War I was also raging at this point and nobody had time, money, or patience to make jewel-encrusted eggs. But this isn't the end, because of course Fabergé had a few eggs in the works that were either unfinished or never delivered when the Revolution happened. The Caroline? How to pronounce Caroline? Karelian? Karelian. Okay. The Karelian birch egg was delivered in 1917, but the Tsar and his family had already left by the time it arrived, so it just kind of sat there until it was stolen like a coffee maker in a FedEx box on the front porch. But like many things that were stolen, it eventually ended up in a museum. And again, this was not the end. There was one last unfinished egg. The Constellation Egg. It's a blue glass egg with the constellation Leo on it in diamonds that sits on a crystal cloud stand. But the sticking point here is that there are actually two eggs, both claiming by their respective institutions to be the real egg. The Fersman Mineralogical Museum has one of them, as it was found in 2001, and they say it's the true one. Whereas the other one is owned by a Russian billionaire named Alexander Ivanov that he said in 2004 that he got in the 1990s, you guys, and it's the real actual egg and it's actually finished and not unfinished at all. So who knows? Surprisingly, after a revolution, a war, nearly 100 years for most of them, and their temptingly resellable jewels, a lot of eggs are safely in museums or in the documented hands of private collectors. But some of them are lost even to this day, including the second egg made in 1886 called the Hen with the Sapphire Pendant. This one has no pictures, no drawings, and conflicting written reports. Suffice to say that it includes a chicken, a sapphire, and just by rolling the dice, probably some kind of flower, a portrait, and a clock. Maybe throw in a ruby pendant for good measure. But roughly, it's said to be a jeweled hen in a nest holding a sapphire-studded egg in its beak, which I would again argue is not an egg, and in fact a hen, but hey, it's only time that makes the difference. There's also the Cherub with Chariot Egg from 1888. Quite an elusive oblong entity with only a single blurry photo existing of it that is actually in the reflection of something else and also partially hidden by another egg. It is the Mothman of Imperial Eggs. And surprise, it has a clock in it. We can also guess it had more jewels on it than a jean jacket owned by someone who just got a bedazzler for Christmas. And also probably some golden cherubs in a chariot, but that's pretty much it. The one lost from 1889 was the Necessary Egg that, again, only has one picture of it, but less cryptid this time. Its surprise was a bunch of toiletry items, so probably some brushes and combs and stuff all covered in diamonds and also lost. It actually for sure survived the revolution and was sold to Wartsky, who specialized in jewels and Fabergé, but was then bought by some guy called A. Stranger in 1952 for £1,250. I wonder if he wore a fake mustache to really sell it. I guess you could just do that back in the day. You could just walk into your local jeweler's in some Groucho Marx glasses, slap down a fat stack of cash, buy a historical Russian artifact, give your name as Seymour Butts, and peace out of there, never to be seen again. Moving on. In 1897, the lost egg was called the Mauve Egg, but the surprise survived. Honestly, it's not that interesting. It's just a mauve enamel egg with some miniatures and surprise, wow, some portraits. I mean, I'm not saying I'd pass this one up if I found it at my local flea market, but it's not like it's a gold and jewel-covered chicken. Then we had a record of finding them pretty much whole all the way until 1903, when we lost the whole Royal Danish egg that we only know from a single picture. It had a portrait in it, you know the deal. One thing about it, though, was it was crazy big as far as eggs go, like 9 inches. Imagine how big the chicken was. It's an original joke! In 1909, they made another egg that was lost, called the Alexander III Commemorative Egg. So, failed the commemorative part. Only one photo exists, and they switched it up by instead of having a painting inside, they had a bust. Wow, how different. It's lost though, so bummer. And that's that. There are more eggs that were made by Fabergé, but they're not the Imperial egg, so they're generally put in different lists and not as elaborate. generally. But by now you can guess they have a lot of birds and jewels and clocks on them. But, like, really pretty clocks. So in conclusion, I tried to email the Fabergé company, and they said if I wanted an egg made, I'd have to talk to their bespoke department, and it would be around $1,600,000 for a small egg object. And since the ability to talk to people and money are two things I do not have, I guess I'll just sit here in the corner staring longingly into blurry photos of shiny eggs. Eggs, man. Eggs.